Okay.
Ezra, come on. Ezra has his own way of living and being and timetable. Yeah, because like Ezra's like very, very busy, you know. Has to look out of the window and like, you know, drink from his plain glass.
I love the glass.
I live in Amsterdam together with Ezra Zino Pantani, who's a tabby cat, tabby Cyprus. Well, he's red or orange or caramel or gold. The name is Ezra Zino Pantani, the reuzenkrokodil. To start with his last name, the reuzenkrokodil, which means like the enormous crocodile. It's based on a story by Roald Dahl, and it's about a crocodile who's hungry, and he ventures out to eat kids, and then the kids eat him. Well, they don't eat him, but they catch the crocodile. So it's actually, but I really like. I read the story later, and it's not so great for the crocodile. But in my memory as a kid, the crocodile was like this most amazing creature. And also, it was my partner's favorite book as a kid. And in all honesty, I thought it was funny to name the cat Enormous Crocodile. And now, if we have to go to the veterinary, there's like something. What do you call this? Behind his name that says that he's a cat, so that there's not actually a crocodile walking in. And Pantani, because he comes from Valkenburg, which is a cycling city. It's in the south of the Netherlands, and they have a mountain and they cycle a lot. And Pantani was a great cyclist. And Zeno, because cats and time, I don't know if you're familiar with this, I still, it's about how can you trace time. And there was like this Greek philosopher and who made like this thesis about how to calculate time and how it's also kind of impossible. So there's a story that goes with that. And cats, I don't know, like I wish I could be a cat and I'd live in a different time. And actually I wanted to call Ezra, but then my uncle was like, you can't do that. Ezra is a fascist poet. You can't do that. He's a fascist, anti-Semitic, horrible, horrible guy, which is true. Ezra Pound was pretty terrible. And then like the other name option was Zeno, and my uncle was like, yeah. And then I was like, but I like Ezra, and then I ended up doing all of them. Yeah, so that's how he had this long name. And Ezra also, in Hebrew, it means helper. My uncle, who was so strongly against the name Ezra, was like, helper. How can you call a cat helper? Like, he's not your helper. He's not a slave. And I was like, no, I meant more like support, like not in such a hierarchy structure. And he's like, you can't do that. You can't call your cat helper. And I'm like, but I think helper is really positive. Ezra was a gift from my mother. And he is a bit of my therapy cat because I used to have like panic attacks and stuff. And Ezra is really great with as like a grounding move, and also more aware when I'm stressed than I am. So it really helps. So I thought Ezra was a suitable name. Also, cats are not necessarily nice, you know? They eat like little baby birds. And, you know, like sometimes you're like, hey, how are you doing? And they're like, shh. You know, I mean, I think, I mean, I wouldn't say that cats are anti-Semites, fascists, or poets, you know? I don't know. Hence a long name, and I couldn't really choose. And then what's great, there's no rules. So you can give your cat whatever long name you want. But well, I mean, we drove all the way down there, which is like 200 kilometers to meet Ezra. And Ezra was just like, well, it was your choice to drive. I didn't, you know, hey, I didn't write the emails. I mean, I got shit to do with this. And my mom was like, which was like in another town, like there's a lot of rules. So like we had to drive for an hour and then we had to think. And officially you can only come back like 2 days later. But we were like, hey, that's like, and they were like, okay, we'll change the procedure a little bit. But we had to decide. And my mom was like, I think you're doubting it. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. It's like a big decision. And also he doesn't really seem to like me. And my mom was like, he's a kitten. Are you crazy? He's never met you before. What do you expect? Also, we drove 200 kilometers, so you better. So we signed the papers. My mom paid 127 euros. And now I own Ezra, which I think is incredibly weird. And then we drove back to the town and we put him in the carriage thing. And then my mom had this strange idea of going to a castle in Valkenburg. So me and the cat, we went to a castle. I mean, there's pictures of that. And then Ezra was like so relaxed with me at some point. Like, I guess. So I took him to my partner's house, who's not into cats, but of course fell instantly in love with this cat. And like their bond is like crazy. It makes me like, I know there's enough love for everybody. But yeah.
Are you jealous?
Sometimes, yeah. You know.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, be with me, sit with me. And I think,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Ezra is very meticulous about timing. So, like in the morning, he wants to go into the garden at 7:30 sharp. Not 5 minutes before, not 5 minutes after. He's like ready. Mm-hmm. And that's with everything. He's very much has made his own routine and he's very precise about it. Okay. So at 7:30 sharp, yeah, he goes into the garden. And that's like his first garden outing. And he goes for like until like 8:30. And then he wants to go back in. He can't go independently because there's a stairwell, so we have to walk with him. But like at 8:30, he's again at the door and he will meow and I have to get him. I have to walk down and pick him up and let him in again. And then if I'm not going to work, which I think he prefers, he wants to go out, I think again at like 10:30. Mm-hmm. And then he goes out longer until like 12. Then he stays inside and he wants to go back outside at like 3. Mm-hmm. Until like 5. Then he wants food. But that doesn't really work, you know, because we're not necessarily home. So this is tricky. This is like in Corona, we could do this schedule. Mm-hmm. But now we're not necessarily home. But he's trying to be flexible. But now it's like, okay, if you're going to work all day, fine. But then if you get back home, it's like 6:30, let me go outside. Mm-hmm. And then at night, again, I think he likes it when I'm like, when I lie on the couch at 11, because then he sits like here. And he will even kind of come to get me for it. And he does that for like half an hour or something, sometimes a little more. And then he goes into his tent, which is where he sleeps at like midnight. And then no, I think at 11:30 he goes into his tent and it's like half an hour break. And then I go to bed and then he jumps into the windowsill and he sits there and then he walks and then he sits beside me and then we start to sleep. And then in the morning, he wants to go out at 7:30. But like at 7, he moves from my side to my partner's side. Because my partner has to let him out into the garden in the morning. Yeah. Like I wrote you about a project that I did with Ezra where he showed me his world. And like, which was like, we would go into the garden and I would bring this big gas system camera. And and like I would follow him and like see the garden every day from a slightly different perspective. And yeah, that really helped, to see what happens if you actually zoom in on like a particular place for a while and like really pay attention and not just receive world as like a background or like, just there as it happens to be there so you can move, or like space as a given. So like for me, it's about finding ways in which I can be open to different perspectives and also be more aware of my own perspective and its limitations. Like, which is really difficult, because like as a human, I can't unthink myself as human. Mm-hmm. So I can only like try to find ways to become more acquainted with other ways of being, of other forms of knowledge. But then it's still a construct, and like, yeah, with Ezra, like, I mean, it's also very much like a sensory experience. Like, I don't, I project a lot of feelings onto it, but I think it's like also really about like with really like as a starting point, it's very much about energy. And like, if I approach Ezra with like an energy that's off, like not necessarily aggressive or something, but just kind of out of sync, he senses it, So it's a very important check, I think. And like, yes, that's also the challenge. Like, how can you be open to other perspectives and at the same time, like, when do you give space and when do you shape space, like, because I don't think like, I mean, yeah, I think people are actually not as important. Like, the world can exist without us easily. It's just maybe I happen to be a human, so I would like to be in a world with people. But yeah, I think it's incredibly difficult to really make that shift because we're so conditioned to think in terms of like modes of production and like yeah, or like super meta, whereas like if you look at More Than Human, it's also really practical. Like right now I'm doing a project on soil. Like, what is soil? Mm-hmm. Like, what's in there, It's like, oh, the earth, I walk on it. Like, yeah, but like what's actually underneath? I don't know. To resume our relationship, I think this photo, it really has like this, I don't know, kind of almost erotic, sensuous. It's crazy.